Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for for listening in. I feel like I'm preaching to the converted, though, because there's a lot of you that I already know. Today, I just want to give you a brief background information on what is going on in Chile, what's happening in the industry, and some how Chile is responding to different market requirements. Oop. But first of all, for those who do not know, I just want to go through a very quick video about Chile in 1 minute. You can clap if you want. That's no problem. Just a little bit about us. The Chilean Food Exporters Association. We were established in 1935. We're a non-profit private entity. We represent growers and exporters of fresh fruit from Chile. We have one basic objective, and that is to facilitate the exports of fresh fruit across the globe. We actually represent almost 96% of all the volume of fresh fruit exported through our members. We have something like 351 companies currently associated to the association, who represent almost 6,000 different growers. And actually within the association we have a number of different product-specific committees. Each one of these product-specific committees takes care of their own strategy action plans in terms of promotions, for example. So within the association we have the kiwi fruit committee, the avocado, the blueberry committee, the cherry committee, etc. And we're one of the few associations in Chile actually to be certified ISO 9001-2008. I won't go into too much detail about what we do, but we do a lot of things, from opening up of, along with our government partners, opening up of new markets. We undertake a lot of different types of promotional activities. We generate and we communicate a lot of information back to our growers and exporters, as well as our most important importers and distributors worldwide. Just a little bit of background on what Chile is today in the international fresh fruit sector. In fact, every single day, 82 million consumers enjoy a piece of delicious fresh fruit from Chile, everywhere in the world. 82 million consumers every single day. Currently, Chile is the largest exporter of fresh fruit from the southern hemisphere. And actually, we are the largest exporter of blueberries, cherries, plums, and table grapes in the world. And in fact, just recently, one of our major markets, China, we just recently became China's #1 fresh fruit supply partner, basically due to our ever-increasing exports of table grapes and obviously cherries. Some characteristics of our industry. Today, the food and beverage industry in Chile represents around about $16.1 billion FOB. And of that, 32% is represented by the fresh fruit exporting sector. That means we are larger than the wine sector, than the seafood sector, and the meat sector. Okay. It's a fairly young industry. 1980, we were exporting only 260,000 tons. Today, we're exporting almost 2.7 million tons of fresh fruit globally. We're very market-orientated. We're very export-orientated. We export to more than 100 different countries around the world, more than 30 different species of fresh fruit. We work together with more than 1,700 fresh fruit importers. So our exporters and growers are very in tune with what is happening in the international marketplace. And obviously this is a very important sector internally for the country. the sector directly generates almost 450,000 direct employments. I want to move now to some data in terms of our exports. All these figures that you will see are in tons, and they relate to the last season. Okay. As you can see, we exported 2.6 million tons of fresh fruit. Europe actually is our second largest export market, representing 23%. It grew from the previous season. But incredibly also, and I'd like to point it out, Asia today represents for us almost 18%. If we looked at this chart 10 years ago, probably wouldn't have represented more than 5%. But we've had such significant and continuous growth in Asia that today it's fairly close to what we export to Latin America. And Latin America are our neighbors. In terms of our fresh fruit exports, dominated by, I would say, table grapes and the red varieties of fresh fruit. But at the same time, we've grown significantly in terms of our avocado exports, our cherry exports are growing, our blueberry exports are growing. I would say those are our three top products. In terms of our exports to Europe, the Netherlands is still our first port of destination. Even though over the last few seasons, we've seen a steady decline in the amount of exports coming directly into the Netherlands. Why? Basically because our exporters are ever more trying to go directly to the different markets, whether they be in Eastern Europe or the newly created Euro-Asian Union. How are we changing to international market requirements? Because we have to. If you look at other Southern Hemisphere countries, I'll give you an example of Australia. Australia doesn't export more than 30% of its total production because it doesn't have to. They have a very important local demand for their fresh produce, so that they don't really need to export. We do. We export around about 90% of our total production is exported. And in some cases, a lot higher, depending on the species. So in fact, the fresh fruit sector in Chile is very much export orientated, and it's been that way ever since the beginning. Some things that I'll just give you some examples of the types of things that we're doing in terms of meeting market requirements. New varieties. I think in the next 3 to 5 years, you're going to see a lot of new changes in terms of the varieties, especially of table grapes, that Chile is exporting across the globe. For example, in table grapes, Europe, we exported almost 17% of our total exports of table grapes to Europe. We export in total around about 730,000 tons of table grapes. A lot of our exporters and growers today are looking at new varieties which have the following characteristics. Varieties that are probably later in the season, are easy to transport, especially given the fact that we're such a long way away. We need to be able to transport those products via sea freight to such markets as China, the Middle East, etc. Or maybe in the future to Africa. Africa, we have at least 50 days sea freight. So we need to develop varieties that can handle that type of distance. Consumers in general are looking for larger sizes, sweeter flavor, and also seedless. In most countries, and I'll give you the example of Korea, for example. 5 years ago, the dominant variety of red grapes in Korea was Red Globe. Today, Thompson. And in a matter of 5 years, they've completely switched to wanting white, seedless grapes. In Chile, there are many different type of varieties that our growers and exporters are trialing. I just want to give you one example currently that is actually a variety made in Chile, spearheaded by the Ministry of Agriculture, and it's called the Inia Grape 1. This is a black seedless variety of grape developed by the public sector. They've done some trials to Asia, which has been relatively successful. But again, this is only one example of the many different varieties available, which you have here. We have varieties that you have to pay royalties or patents, etc. But it just shows you the different varieties that are probably going to be coming out of Chile in the not too distant future. So one, in terms of market requirements, we're changing to what consumers really want. We're developing, for the first time, new varieties made in Chile, taking into consideration our local conditions, made for the external market. Second example of what we're doing in terms of meeting market requirements is new marketing and promotions. Chile has been doing marketing and promotions of its fresh fruit products for at least 30 years. We've developed campaigns, promotional campaigns in Europe, in the US, in Asia. We're doing some activities now in the Middle East, in India, very soon. But we're also changing to meet what the market requires. And for example, this is a good example. In Spain, today, many of you may know that Spain is a very large producer and producer of blueberries. They're huge producers of blueberries. Just to give you an example, in Huelva, they're producing almost 50 to 60,000 tons of blueberries. That's a little bit more than half what Chile is doing at the moment. So they're very large producers of blueberries. But most of their blueberries goes to maybe 3 or 4 markets: Scandinavia, Germany, and the UK, and all within Europe. But they've realized with the explosive growth they've had in terms of their blueberry production that actually they need to start promoting blueberry consumption in Spain. Because if you look at the consumption of blueberries in Spain, it's very, very low. People just aren't accustomed to eating jamón with blueberries. So what have we decided to do? We formed an alliance with local growers, Spanish growers of blueberries, which are grouped together under the association called Fresh Huelva. We signed a collaboration agreement with Fresh Huelva and our Blueberry Committee, basically with the idea of promoting the consumption of the blueberry category in Spain between Chilean and Spanish growers and exporters. So we're actually building the consumption of the category during the Chilean season and during the Spanish season. Each association has their own budgets, but we form a committee, a joint working group, basically to define, okay, our strategy. Where are we going to be promoting? When are we going to be promoting? With what message are we going to be promoting our products? And that's something quite new and relevant because it's aimed, as I said to you before, at increasing the consumption of a category of product together with the local growers of that particular country. Third example. Today, I was talking to some of you before. Today, information travels very, very fast. What happens today will probably be published in all the main fruit media by tomorrow, or maybe even today. 15 years ago, I remember that it was hard to find information about what was going on in the different fresh fruit industries and countries. But today everything's so transparent. Everything's available, everybody knows what's going on, etc. And I think Chile has been doing for a very long time, has been in this line of being transparent in terms of information. Today, Chile is probably one of the few countries in the world where you can log online and you know exactly how much fruit is being exported by Chile. By exporter, who receives that fruit, what in terms of boxes, in terms of tons. It's complete transparency, and you know that on a day-to-day basis. So everybody knows exactly what are the transactions of Chile in its fresh fruit sector on a daily or even on a seasonal basis. These are just 3 examples of how Chile is changing to market requirements. Some final comments. We're an important supplier of counter-seasonal fruit, and we will continue to be so. There are increasing opportunities in Europe, Eastern Europe, the new Eurasian Alliance. That's something to watch out for, definitely. Our industry in general is based on many, many private initiatives, but at the end of the day, we're able to come together under the umbrella of, for example, the association, to coordinate different tasks that we need to coordinate together. We have a very free and fair and open industry, which is open to free and fair competition. Our main objective in general is to ensure that people can consume a delicious and a variety of different fresh fruit products around the world. And by far, today and in the future, we're dedicated to the European market. We're dedicated to maintaining our presence in this very important market. It's our second largest market. And we're very, very certain that there will be new opportunities to grow in different categories, not only blueberries, but for example in our table grape exports and our new apple exports, etc. Thank you very much.